Hi, I'm Erik Jones, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. There's a common saying that goes, if you start with the wrong premise, you'll end up at the wrong conclusion. Though this statement doesn't come from the Bible, it is very true. For instance, it can be applied to the mundane matters of life. If it's 5 degrees Fahrenheit outside, but before I leave the house, I have the idea that it's actually 90 degrees outside, that false premise is going to lead me to dress inappropriately and maybe even get frostbite, because I began my day with a false premise. It also applies to more serious ideas. One false premise permeating our world is the idea of materialism. This states that only physical matter exists and everything can be explained on a physical level. This premise says everything that happens must have an entirely physical explanation. Since this would mean there is no spiritual God, this premise inevitably leads to the conclusion that there are no absolute standards of right or wrong. That then becomes a premise itself, which leads to many other false conclusions and evils. So the saying is absolutely true. If you start with the wrong premise, you'll reach the wrong conclusion. But what if we modified that just slightly? What if we reworded it to, if you start with the right premise, you'll reach the right conclusion? Would that be true? Well, the answer is a little less definite. The answer really would be, sometimes. Actually, rewording it slightly more would make it even more accurate. If you start with the right premise, you're on the path to the right conclusion. When we start with the wrong premise, we are pretty much 100% certain to come to the wrong conclusion. But if we start with the correct premise, we are on the way to the right conclusion. But we still have to make correct judgments along the way. That brings us to our verse of focus today, Proverbs 9, verse 10. This verse is about the need to start with the right premise, the most important premise in life. Let's read it. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. This proverb is telling us that the most important premise is the fear of the Lord. To fear God in this context means to humbly respect and take Him seriously. It means to revere Him, to live our lives with a deep sense of awe for Him and His Word. When we approach life with that premise, that should lead us to seek guidance from His Word. And when we seek that guidance, if we respect and revere Him, we will accept it and apply it. And when we accept and apply God's Word to our life and base our beliefs and decisions on it, we will develop wisdom. But does this verse mean that we can't learn things from sources outside the Bible? That literally all knowledge must be sourced directly from the Bible? No, that's not what it's saying. The Bible doesn't claim to be the definitive source of all forms of knowledge. It's not a history, science, or even a personal finance textbook. There are a lot of good and helpful things we can learn from sources outside of the Bible. However, and this is a big however, we must apply this proverb by filtering everything we read and learn through the central premise of the fear of God and His revealed knowledge. That means if we read something that contradicts God's Word, we reject it. And if we read something that doesn't contradict God's Word and by observation and experience proves to be accurate, we can accept it. The key is that the fear and knowledge of God is always and must always be the foundation, the bedrock on which we build all other knowledge. By learning correct knowledge, first from the Scriptures, and secondly from other sources that don't contradict the Scriptures, and apply it appropriately, we grow in wisdom. And wisdom is simply the practical application of correct knowledge. So what's the takeaway of this short and simple proverb? Base your life on the right premise. Develop a deep respect and reverence for the true God, and build your life on the knowledge revealed in His Word. Then, everything else can be built on that foundation. When your life is built on that simple yet profound premise, the premise of the fear of God and spiritual knowledge, you'll be well positioned to become a wise and understanding person.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.